Chapter 96 Pity. An old tungsten filament lamp was suspended in the middle of the room by a black wire, flickering with a dim light. A quiet atmosphere was like ink drops falling into clear water, gradually spreading and permeating the room. As the clock on the table pointed to 12, a deepened low bell sound reverberated from a far distance. The 10 people beside the table were suddenly awakened and looked at this eerie scene one after another. TXIA's eyes widened as he stared at this familiar scene, his heart racing like 10,000 horses galloping, unable to calm down. He was back. Everyone was back. The goat-headed figure still stood beside them, emitting a unique stench of decay and a strong, unpleasant smell of mutton. Although he had expected to come back, when Tijal sat beside the round table again, there was only despair in his heart. "Good morning, 9 of you." The familiar voice of the goat man rang out again. "I'm glad to meet you here. You've been sleeping in front of me for 12 hours. Taking this opportunity." Tijal quietly observed those familiar faces and found that their expressions were the same as when he first met them. Yao Jin stared blankly at the goat man and asked, "Who are you?" Upon hearing this question, Tijal frowned. What was going on? Did none of them remember what had happened before? If so, why did he still remember? Since you all have this question, then I'd introduce myself to the 9 of you. Just as the goat man was about to wave his hands and make a passionate speech, Lawyer Zhang said, "There's no need to introduce yourself to us. I advise you to stop your actions as soon as possible. I suspect that you've detained us for more than 24 hours, which constitutes the crime of illegal detention. Every word you say now will be recorded by me and form testimony unfavorable to you." Tijal looked blankly at Lawyer Zhang and then at Dr. Xiao. It was his turn to raise doubts. Sure enough, Dr. Xiao spoke up. "Wait a minute. We've just woken. How do you know we've been imprisoned for 24 hours? What on earth is going on?" TXIA's lips moved slightly. These people seemed to not know each other at all. They were saying the same words, doing the same actions as last time. It was as if nothing had changed and everything was just starting over again. Lawyer Zhang explained to Dr. Xiao arrogantly, which attracted everyone's attention. Yes, in TXIA's impression, Lawyer Zhang's initial behavior was very suspicious. She was taking every opportunity to show off her dominance, which was probably her protective color beneath her calm exterior. After her explanation, everyone fell into silence. The silence lasted for over 10 seconds. Tijal felt a bit strange. Last time, it seemed that someone had said something at this moment, but this time that person didn't. So a series of subsequent events didn't happen. This sense of separation between reality and memory made Kujal extremely puzzled. Perhaps you've also noticed that although there are 10 people in this room, I addressed you as 9 of you. And I don't care how many people there are here. I advise you, you bastard, to be sensible. Yao Jin said viciously. "You probably don't know the consequences of provoking me. I'll really take your life." Tijal suddenly thought of something and turned to look at the young man on his right. It was a face that was both familiar and strange. He was also the 10th person in the room whom Kuaizhou had only met once. He was still looking at everyone with a strange smile on his face. Having been through this once, Tijal somewhat understood. Almost all those with such smiles were natives. Was this 10th person just brought in by the goat man to make up the number? The goat man walked up to the young man and placed his hand on the back of his head. Tijal was startled and quickly turned his face to the other side without showing any signs of panic. Last time, the young man's brains had splattered onto his face, and he definitely didn't want to experience that warm feeling again. Only a dull bang was heard, and the young man's head exploded on the table. At the same time, a bell sound came from a distance. It was precisely this bell sound that suddenly made Tijal think of something. Perhaps this man who had just died wasn't a native, but a reverberator. But why was his behavior so dull? Why was his role so absurd? The reason for having 10 people here is to use one of them to make you quiet down, the goat man said as he shook the blood off his hand. Lincoln immediately let out a scream, exactly at the same time as last time. Tijal should have thought of it earlier. The moment they woke up, they heard the bell sound, indicating that at least one person had obtained a reverberation at this time. When the young man died, the bell sounded again and the reverberation ended. If something that happened only once could be regarded as a coincidence, but the bell had rung twice when the young man died successively. He must be a reverberator, as Lin Crane suddenly stopped. The goat man let out a few strange laughs. Very well, 9 of you. It seems that you've all come down. Now, please allow me to introduce myself. I'm the goat man, and you are the participants. Now I've gathered you here to participate in a game and ultimately create a god. This time, Chiton by the death and focused all his attention on the goat man's explanation. But at this time, everyone fell into silence again. Tijang somewhat forgot who had spoken at that time. He only remembered that someone had asked the goat man, "What kind of god are we creating?" But why didn't he speak up? "Aren't you curious about what kind of god we're going to create?" The goat man looked blankly at everyone. "Tell us if you want to. Otherwise, keep it to yourself." Ao Jin gritted his teeth and snorted coldly. "You think I'll be impressed just because you killed someone in front of me? Forget it." The goat man shook his head and said, "We're going to create a god like Niwa. It can fulfill all our wishes. A great task is waiting for the god to accomplish." Looking at the silent crowd, the goat-headed figure sighed helplessly. "You're so boring. Don't you have any question?" Several girls were clearly frightened. Tish all looked at the remaining men. Officer Lee was staring at the goat man with a serious expression, no different from last time. Dr. Xiangwai Aimo were also trembling after seeing the dead body, with a look of fear on their faces, and Kaya Jiao Jin had a disdainful look, showing his unique expression. Seeing that no one was speaking, Diao Jiao Jin became angry for no reason. Everyone else was afraid of the goat man, but he wasn't. Damn it. Is this the investiture of the gods? If we win the game with you, will you make us god? What if we can't win? If you can't win? The goat man looked at the blood on his hand and said in a somewhat dejected tone, "It would be such a pity if you can't win." "For whom is it a pity?" Tijal suddenly asked. The goat man turned around and looked at Tijal, his eyes extremely cold. "For this world." "For this world?" Tijal was stunned and seemed to understand something, but he had even more questions in his mind. In other words, if they couldn't create a god, the one that would suffer the greatest loss would be the land of the end.